Sleeping Beauty's forest is dying. It's not the only climate crisis facing Germany's next chancellor. At the heart of this lush landscape sits a swath of dry, bare earth. The ground is empty, save for a few ghostly white trunks pointing skywards. Viewed up close, this scene in the Reinhardswald nature park is equally desolate. Brittle sticks crunch underfoot and tree stumps dot the empty landscape, which stretches over some 50 acres. The spruce trees that once stood here have been killed by a bark beetle infestation. The insects thrive in the warmer and drier weather conditions that occur more frequently because of climate change. Once the bark has peeled off, the trees look a bit like bones, said Peter Meyer, head of forest nature conservation at the Northwest German Forest Research Institute in Göttingen and Hanmunden. Bark beetle infestations are worsened by drought conditions, since once the tree has been weakened by a lack of water, it can't produce enough resin to combat the insects. Then the beetle can just drill into the tree, lay eggs underneath the bark, and the larvae feed on the tree, interrupting the water supply, and that makes the tree die, Meyer explains. Drought is the trigger for bark beetle infestations.
Germany has suffered historic drought in recent years, and 2018 was the warmest since records began 140 years ago. In other parts of the country this summer, rain has fallen hard and fast, triggering deadly floods. All of these events have put the climate crisis squarely on the campaign trail ahead of Germany's federal election on Sunday. It's the first in 16 years that won't feature Chancellor Angela Merkel, and the candidates vying to replace her are all pitching their climate credentials. The crisis is being felt in many parts of Germany, and the country's fairy tale forests are no exception. Germany's climate election rose bushes cling to the ancient walls of the 14th century Sauberberg Castle, said to have inspired the Grimm brothers' fairy tale Sleeping Beauty. The winding road is dotted, too, with electoral posters. The grinning faces of political candidates adorn lampposts and road signs, marking a national election in which green issues have taken center stage. Germany's next chancellor will face a hefty list of climate challenges as they steer Europe's largest economy toward its goal of carbon neutrality by 2045, including the transition from fossil fuels to renewables, replacing combustion engine cars with electric ones, and the completion of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which brings gas from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea. The election comes just months after devastating floods in western Germany submerged entire towns and killed more than 180 people. At the other weather extreme, Germans suffered 2 years of extreme drought in 2018 and 2019 and watched as large parts of southern Europe were wrecked by wildfires this summer. Scientists have warned for decades that climate change will make extreme weather events more frequent and intense, but this summer's floods created a fresh sense of urgency, prompting Environment Minister Svenja Schulze to declare that climate change has arrived in Germany. All these events have led many to wonder how Germany will meet its emissions reduction goals. The country has pledged a 65% cut in emissions by 2030, compared to 1990 levels. There are also questions over whether Germany is doing its fair share to meet the Paris Agreement's target of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. Germany is off track in achieving its emission targets. It should be at 40% below 1990 levels this year, but an increase in emissions as it recovers from the pandemic means it will miss that target. Merkel's replacement will play a leading role in shaping Europe's climate policy at a pivotal moment in the fight against global warming. In November, world leaders will gather in Glasgow, Scotland, for international climate talks, known as 26 Colombian pesos. The approach that the next German government takes can have a major multiplier effect for European climate action and EU climate leadership on the world stage, said Raphael Loss, coordinator for pan-European data projects at the European Council on Foreign Relations. But with just days to go before the election, it is not at all clear who will be the next chancellor. Polls put the center-left Social Democrats, led Olaf Scholz, slightly ahead of Merkel's Christian Democratic Union, led by Armin Laschet. A Green's presence in government would undoubtedly force Germany's next government to be more ambitious on climate. A grim story. Baerbock's recent political advertisement was filmed in Germany's forests, a place of deep ecological and cultural importance to people here. Forests are among crucial solutions to the climate crisis. They suck up much of the world's carbon and store it safely underground. They are also a source of wealth, providing 76 million cubic meters of timber each year, for use in everything from construction to paper manufacturing. In the last 7 years, the average market value for Germany's roundwood production amounted to over 3.5 billion euros annually. But Germany's forests are, by some measures, in their worst shape for decades. Crown condition is like a medical thermometer. It shows how the trees are doing. The survey shows, our forests are sick, said Agriculture Minister Julia Klöckner. The main culprits were the bark beetles. The insects mainly attack spruces, which are the most common tree species in Germany, making up 25% of the country's forests. Last year, around 43.3 million cubic meters of damaged timber had to be cut down as a result of bark beetle infestation, according to the Federal Office of Statistics. Germany's spruce forests date back to the reforestation efforts of the 19th and 20th century, when degraded woodlands were restocked with this fast-growing tree species. Broadleaved forests were also converted to spruce forests. Meyer estimates that this decimated patch of spruce trees in Reinhardswald Nature Park, within hiking distance of Sleeping Beauty's castle, is around 80 years old. To the average passerby, the Brittle landscape looks like a graveyard of skeletal tree trunks. But Meyer, who has studied trees for more than 3 decades, sees signs of scraggly new growth. He says if left to its own devices, the forest can heal. A short distance from the Sleeping Beauty castle also sits the lush Sauberberg primeval forest. Unlike the decimated spruce forest nearby, this woodland has been spared the devastation caused by bark beetle infestation. Experts hope forests like this one can offer clues as to which tree species may be more resistant to rising temperatures in future. So far, they have found that oak trees appear to be more tolerant to drought and waterlogging, to extremes of climate, than beech trees, for example, Meyer says. A 21st century enchanted wood.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe